In your nearly 30 years of experience in law enforcement, have you ever conducted an interview with a significant witness in a case and either not recorded your interview or not taken notes and not written a report?
No, not that I recall ever doing that.
As an investigator, can you tell the jury why you either record your interviews or take notes and then write a report immediately following your interviews?
I like to record because it's 100% accurate. The reports are done generally for our purposes as a summary, kind of as a refresher, to identify key points that were made during the interview. But again, my preference has always been to record because that's always 100% accurate.
Would you ever interview a witness and not record your interview or not write a report or not take any notes of that interview in your experience as an investigator?
Objection or irrelevance, whether you would or would not.
Make an offer of proof. Well, but the first question is a significant witness. Now you're asking any witness.
Okay,
So, with any witness, that question's irrelevant. The answer would be irrelevant.
sure. Imagine a scenario where you interviewed somebody months prior. Hypothetically, you did not record this interview, you did not write a report, and you did not take any notes. Then months later, you go back and try to summarize what that witness told you. Is that something that that witness is a significant witness in your case that you're investigating? Is that something that a trained police officer such as yourself would ever do?
Objection, Your Honor, cold speculation.
No.
Why not?
I mean, it's just not accurate. Again, my preference would be to record it, just so it's 100% accurate to go off that for any kind of summary.
Okay, in addition to going off of the summary, if you record your interviews in a case, are those also given to the district attorney?
Yes.
Would those also be given to the defense?
Yes, and everything.
Would anyone involved in the case then have the opportunity to hear verbatim what questions you asked and what the answers were that were given?
Correct.
Likewise, if you record your interviews, you said after you conduct an interview that you will summarize your interview in a police report, correct?
Yes. Typically in the police report or as part of the case, yes.
In this case specifically, did you speak to Mr. Ephron the day that you were assigned to this case?
Yes, on the November 9th, 2021, yes.
And did you record your interview with him in any way?
Yes, that was recorded, but it included myself, Detective Camacho, Detective Menifee.
Understood. But when you say it was recorded, was it an audio recording?
That was an audio recording because it was a telephonic interview.
And did the audio recording capture your voice and his voice?
It did.
Okay. When you later went back and, or not you, or when your partner, I believe you said, went back and summarized that interview, summarized it into a report, correct?
Correct.
And I believe that you testified that there were a few sentences in the report that had some inaccuracies, correct?
That is correct.
But that was inaccuracies in the report, those were not things that Mr. Ephron specifically said made in the report. Were those inaccuracies in the report, or were those things that Mr. Ephron said to you in the report?
There were inaccuracies in the report. Summary.
Okay. I believe you were specifically asked about whether after the shooting, Mr. Ephron contacted an attorney before he returned to the scene to recover the gun casings located at Selma and Vista Del Mar. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And did Mr. Ephron ever make that statement to you that he did things in that order?
That is not my recollection.
If Mr. Ephron testified that he first collected the cartridge cases and then he contacted an attorney, did he ever tell you anything directly contradictory to that?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah. If Mr. Ephron testified that he first went to the scene and collected the cartridge cases and he contacted an attorney at some point after that, Did he ever say anything to you that was different from that word?
No.
I believe you were also asked about the line in a report in which it was written that Mr. Ephron said that Illz had a knife. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Did Mr. Ephron ever make that statement to you?
No.
Was that just an inaccuracy in the summary of the report?
That's correct. It was an inaccuracy.
When you were also asked if that essentially you knew that there was that inaccuracy in the report prior to your testimony today, correct?
Correct.
And you were asked if you ever went back to correct that police report, correct?
Correct.
Did you testify under oath at a prior hearing in November 2023 at the preliminary hearing to that inaccuracy?
Yes, I did.
So did you tell the court, the DA, and the defense that that line in your report that Illz had a knife was not correct?
That's correct.
Has Mr. Ephron ever identified anybody else other than Mr. Phillips, who we've been calling ASAP 12V, as the person with the knife outside of the parking lot?
No.
On cross-examination, a little bit on Tuesday and into today, I believe mostly on Tuesday, you were asked about whether you reviewed individual videos, and based upon those individual videos, you could tell certain characteristics about the gun. Do you recall that?
Yes.
When you review evidence to determine something like whether a gun is operable, if you have multiple videos, do you view those videos individually to make that determination, or do you view them collectively to make that determination?
Collectively, obviously, I look at them individually, but look at them as a whole, and obviously try to put them in sequence with events collectively.
Okay. And I believe you said when you reviewed the video from the parking structure, that individual video, you couldn't say it was an operable gun, correct?
Correct.
But when you review the video collectively, is it your belief that the gun that we see in the defendant's hand was operable?
Objection will be Your Honor.
It is.
When you viewed the videos collectively, what was your opinion regarding whether the gun was operational?
It was an operational firearm.
How did you come to that determination?
I mean, in the totality of the circumstances, the first view of the weapon, followed by the second view, the reaction to the incident as the four individuals in the distance in the camera were scrambling, as you can see that something was going on, in conjunction with the sounds of the shots heard from the other camera, and then the fluidity of everybody running through the cameras over to El Centro. That along the lines with the information provided by Mr. Ephron, that was my opinion that it was an operable firearm and that shots had been fired.
Okay. When you reviewed the sequenced surveillance video, were you reviewing whether or not they were sequenced? What were you using to determine whether they were sequenced accurately?
In totality, just the movements of the individuals in the cameras, again, along with pieces of lights, but a lot of it has to do just with the sequence of events, walking around from one side to the next, and just kind of following the individuals in the video, and obviously in conjunction with the sound. So it sounds more difficult than it is, but it's just kind of collectively putting it all together and watching it.
Okay, from what you were just describing, it sounded like you were using audio and visual cues in the videos, correct?
Yes.
Did you specifically use the timestamps in order to determine if they were sequenced correctly?
No, not exactly. Obviously, I understand from collecting a lot of videos, in a lot of cases that individual surveillance cameras systems are all different, and they all can be off by seconds, hours, depending on how they're maintained and kept and updated. So again, a lot of it has to do with just kind of finding certain markers within whatever crime, whatever we're looking for at the time, to try to kind of establish what happened, when you're dealing with more than one camera that captures different points of view from different areas.
Okay, when you collect a video in your cases and you're checking the timestamps for accuracy, are you checking it down to the fraction of a second?
It's captured, and we take that into account and try to determine how far off it may have been. Again, the other factors include that we can't control the maintenance of it, how it's been updated, when it's in service.
But to the fraction of a second, that's what you're checking, or are you checking minutes, hours, things like that?
Generally checking minutes, hours, and events captured that coincide with other markers that we do have, whether it's from another camera or a witness or something else that kind of puts us in that right time frame that we're looking for.
As to the videos from the residents on Mr. Del Mar, the one that had the audio, council kept using the word rewind. Were those physical tapes that you or your partners collected, or was that digital video?
The camera from 6200 residential is all digital.
Were any of the surveillance cameras in this case captured on manual analog tape, or were they all digital recording?
Now they all have been computer digital.
Okay. At the beginning of his questions of you, Mr. Tacopina asked you about whether or not you had spoken to Twelvvy. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you know for a fact that Twelvvy, to this day, still refuses to be interviewed by law enforcement?
Objection, that assumes the fact, not supposed to be sustained.
No, no speaking objections. It's the objection sustained. Ask another question.
To this day, have you been able to interview Twelvvy?
No.
Have you ever been present when Twelvvy was asked if he would agree to an interview?
Yes.
And what was his answer when asked if he would agree to an interview by law enforcement?
No.
Similarly, you were asked about whether or not you'd talked to Mr. Levin. Did you have any indication that before January 20th of 2025, the day before jury selection, that Mr. Levin had any role in this case?
No, not any direct role, no.
Once you were made aware of that he could possibly have anything to say, did you take any efforts to try to interview him or talk to him?
Yes.
Were you successful in those efforts?
No.
Have you been present when Mr. Levin was also present and asked if he would specifically agree to be interviewed by law enforcement?
Yes.
And what was his answer to that question?
No.
As to both Twelvvy and Mr. Levin, did those questions as to whether or not they would agree to an interview with law enforcement, did those occur in this courtroom?
Yes.
Did you or your partners attempt to speak to Mr. Mayers, the defendant?
Yes.
And were you or your partners successful in that effort?
No.
All right, Your Honor, I don't have anything.
Can I do that?
Yes, just briefly, Mark. Detective, we're almost done. We asked a bunch of questions by Mr. Przelomiec just now about a host of inaccuracies on fairly significant issues in
Your Honor,
your reports.
the question is argumentative in itself. It's stated facts and not an evidence.
Okay. Agreed.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Mark?
I don't believe that the question is argumentative.
It assumes facts not an evidence as well, Your Honor. And the question you read back,
Read the question back.
Detective, we're almost done. You were asked a bunch of questions by Mr. Przelomiec just now about a host of inaccuracies on fairly significant issues in your reports.
Let's vague.
Okay. You asked questions about, let's generalize it first, inaccuracies in police reports, correct?
Correct.
Okay. One of those, for example, were who had the knife, right?
Yes,
That's a significant issue, isn't it?
yes, in the report, yes.
One was whether Mr. Ephron was instructed by his attorney to go back to the scene and pick up the shell casings or not. That's a significant issue, isn't it?
Correct.
And those two issues in the reports were inaccurate, correct, according to you?
Yes,
And those could have been corrected at some point, right?
yes, they could.
They never were they?
I mean, as far as generating a new report, other than what's been explained in court, no.
Right. So the reports today are still inaccurate on those issues.
Correct.
You were asked about one other thing. Let's start with this. 12. You were asked if you would agree to interview, if 12 would agree to be interviewed by you, and you said, he said, no, he wouldn't. Are you referring to, correct, sir?
Yes,
Okay. Are you referring to 2 weeks ago in court here?
yes,
Is that the first time you tried to interview him?
yes,
So, in January of 2025 is the first time you tried to interview Twelvvy about an incident that occurred in November 6th of 2021, correct?
correct. Me personally, yes,
How about anyone else in your police department?
yes. No, that would be
No.
the first one, correct.
Now, you were then asked questions about whether the firearm was operational. Remember those questions just now?
Yes, sir.
You testified already on cross-examination that the video from the garage, you can't indicate if that's an operational firearm or not, correct?
Correct.
You testified on Tuesday that the video from 1616 Visa Del Mar, from that video you said, that video alone, there's no evidence of a shooting, correct?
That video alone, no.
Correct. But then you said the totality of the circumstances lead you to believe that the firearm was operational, remember, just now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the totality of the circumstances relative to testimony.
The physical evidence, the video, collectively, yes.
Well, the video, you just said both videos don't add to the fact that it's operational or not.
Collectively, as a whole, not the two that you just cited, but in the entirety of all the videos involved, yes.
Well, which video shows you the firearm was operational? Which video?
Sir, as you put it together with the sound, with the sequence of events, along with the physical evidence and the statements from Mr. Ephron, that is just my opinion, that it is operational, and that's why I believe it.
Well, take out Mr. Ephron for 1 second, because he's the one who recovered the shell casings, right?
Yes,
And he's the one who gives you the narrative on that video that you can't tell what happened, 1616.
correct. I mean, as he provides narrative of the sequence of events, the initial encounter of the gun that was displayed to him, what he believed to be a gun.
All right.
Whether it's operational or not at that point, I can't tell you. But the sequence of events as they evolved to Selma and Vista Del Mar, the cameras there, the incident that took place as far as what I can describe as a scramble during some, obviously, the events that occurred there that Mr. Ephron described as being shot at was consistent in conjunction with the audio from the cameras. Again, this is just what I'm looking at when I'm trying to rationalize and give my opinion as to why I believe it is a gun that was fired.
I'm sorry, you done?
Yes, sir.
Take Mr. Relli, Mr. Ephron out of the equation for a second.
Okay.
Take him out of the equation. You don't have Mr. Ephron. And therefore, the shell cases that he remembered, which we talked about the issues with that on Tuesday. Without Mr. Ephron and his narrative or version of events, with those two videos that you said independently, you do not tell if it's an operable firearm, and in the second video you said you can't see there is a firearm.
It's the improper hypothetical which relies on evidence.
The answer would be no, when yours evidence. Objection sustained.
You want to use his opinion, respond?
No,
Okay, okay.
taking something out of the equation, then makes the hypothetical irrelevant. So ask another question.
Is your conclusion based on the fact that Relli's narrative is truthful?
It is consistent up to the point of what he describes occurred, based on what I've been able to see in connection with the physical evidence that has been provided.
So let me break it down this way. Video 1 alone, you don't know if the gun is operable.
Correct.
Video 2, that's 16 pieces of film or the skull, but you don't even know if there's a gun based on the video.
Specifically, just looking at that, not looking at anything else? No.
Okay. You then hear sounds that appear to be a gunshot, right?
Correct.
Aside from a gun, what else do they make those sounds? An operable gun, I should say.
The sound that I heard off that camera, I mean, a firearm, some kind of replica firearm potentially, but distinct sound of the firearm. Again, my belief it was a firearm.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Przelomiec, anything?
Would you agree that you don't need Mr. Ephron's truthful testimony in order to determine that a shooting occurred at that location?
Check shot.
Now, the question was
It's a
asked.
different question. He's asking a different question.
Can I get a question in your mind, please?
Yeah.
Would you agree you don't need Mr. Ephron's truthful testimony in order to determine that a shooting occurred at that location?
That's so taking him out of the equation. That's number one. Number two, it's leading. It's leading us to me.
Now, the court's ruling, we're getting more speaking objections.
Stating my own.
Those are not moving around, speech.
Read the question again.
Would you agree you don't need Mr. Ephron's truthful testimony in order to determine that a shooting occurred at that location?
It would be a proper question if the question ended with occurred. But when you say at that location, then I believe that calls for speculation.
Would you agree you don't need Mr. Ephron's truthful testimony to establish a shooting occurred?
Yes.
I don't have anything else.
I do now. So, without Mr. Ephron's truthful testimony, what leads you to believe a shooting without Mr. Ephron's truthful testimony? So I guess he's now out of the equation. What would lead you to believe a shooting occurred?
Again, just looking at the video, the first incident where guns displayed, he obviously follows through with his scramble, as you can best describe.
That's not.
Yes, sir.
Wait, you need to answer the question. To ask the question.
You asked a question, let's finish.
Okay, so.
Again, it just comes down to, sir, is looking at everything in combination, even without Mr. Ephron's statement. If I were an investigating officer just responding to investigate a shooting scene where maybe there was some evidence found and establishing what had occurred without a potential witness, would be to obviously look at the same video, listen to the same sound of gunfire. Again, it's just factors that would be known at the time. But it would still lead me to believe that there had been some actual shooting short of a reporting witness being present. I would still believe that.
Okay. So you first cited the fact that the gun was displayed. That was the first thing you just cited, right?
Correct.
Which you already told the jury. The gun that was displayed, the only time you can see a gun in any video was the parking garage you're getting.
Correct.
You already told the jury, by that video, you can't tell if it's operable, right?
Correct, because it was not fired at that point.
Well, you also said the sound could also have been made by a non-operable firearm. You just said that before.
Again, it's in the realm of possibilities.
Okay.
From what I've heard, again, based on the sound, again, this is just my opinion, my expertise, my experience, I believe it to be a firearm.
You also heard, you were here when the police officer's body cam from the scene was played, right?
Yes, sir.
And you heard the police officer say there's no evidence of a shooting here. You heard that, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Detective Flores. You can step down next witness.